This is the DRS train.
Simply lovely. I'm Peter Brook. I'm joined by Nedzo's F1 Gridbox, and you're listening to the DRS Train podcast. So, 2024 has finally come to an end. Abu Dhabi, I'll be honest, for a non-title deciding Abu Dhabi, that was pretty good. There was a lot of drama, fair amount of on-track action, ultimately meaningless because the driver's championship was done. But yeah, I don't know about you, Nedzo, but I thought that was a fairly enjoyable race.
Yeah, it was. Before this race happened, I always used to say that there's only ever been one good Abu Dhabi Grand Prix, and that was 2012. Now I think that this probably goes into that category of at least a good race, because I don't count the likes of 2016, 2021, because they wouldn't have been good if it wasn't for the fact they were title deciders. Like, the actual races themselves were boring, and any championship permutations wouldn't have happened if they weren't a championship finale. But this one was good. Like, it was action throughout. There was a lot of a start. There was also stuff going throughout as well. It wasn't just a case of, oh, loads of guys crashed at the start and nothing happens for the rest of the race. I felt it was quite well balanced.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose when it's the end of the season, and even though there was a constructors' battle, the driver's title was done, it does mean that people kind of let loose a bit more and they can have a bit more fun with it, particularly if they're, for example, they know it's going to be their last race and they're not trying to fight for their seat or whatever, and everyone's just exhausted by the end. But it was, yeah, I was surprised. I was expecting just absolutely nothing to happen, and instead it ended up being reasonably engaging. So I guess we should start with McLaren. So Lando won the race, and with that they won the constructors' title. So that's their first constructors' title in 26 years. Pretty significant. With a having not taken the driver's title as well, which is relatively rare in the grand scheme of things. But yeah, Lando, fastest car, led from the front, did his thing for once, didn't bottle the start. Piastri, obviously, he got hit by Verstappen, spun around, and then he hit Colapinto and got a penalty, just about climbed to 10th. But so he's a bit miffed about that. So yeah, it looked like it kind of hung in the balance on Lando, because if he had an engine failure, that would have given the constructors' title to Ferrari in the end.
Yeah, I mean, that's wishful thinking to assume that the Formula 1 team is going to get an engine failure in 2024. But yeah, I mean, Lando did what he needed to do. It was a boring race from the front. He did what he needed to do. But Oscar, I mean, you said that he got, or he had a collision with Verstappen on that point. I will still maintain that that's Oscar's fault. I'm one of those people, I don't really like Max's aggressive dive bombs a la Mexico. But for me, he was far enough alongside, and the move was predictable enough that Oscar should have had to leave at least some room. I'm not expecting him to just give up the corner, but I feel like he made no effort to actually avoid the collision there, which I think even if someone behind you has done something egregious like a dive bomb, I think it doesn't make you instantly in the right if you just turn in on them. You have to avoid the accident, in my opinion.
I mean, okay, we've seen bigger dive bombs in the past, certainly. I don't think it was entirely unreasonable. I mean, Max, he went over the curb, and so the car kind of slid around a bit because it was a very gentle touch. At that point in the corner, I think it's difficult. You can't necessarily expect Piastri to be checking his mirrors the whole time. Is that he's in his blind spot, so he wouldn't have seen that coming. I think it was just unintentional, because it was a very, very gentle tap, and just because the way he went over the curbs like that. But the thing is, Max got his own penalty in that he spun as well.
Yes.
This is the thing about, I mean, the drivers, they in their latest GPDA meetings and stuff, they have asked for basically for harsher penalties and everything. But it's like, at the end of the day, he also spun, so that's kind of its own penalty. But for him, he didn't care, because it's the last race of the season. It doesn't really matter. So hey.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I'd put it down to, I think you explained it well. I think that makes it a racing incident. And I mean, unless Max was in contention for the win, which even with that spin he wasn't going to care about finishing 6th instead of 7th or whatever. So I can see why he just didn't really care. He was obviously just going to go for it to see what he could do, but that obviously didn't end up happening. Piastri then, obviously, as you said in the previous bit, had that coming together with Colapinto, which was so avoidable. Like, I think from what I don't exactly remember it, but I think Colapinto might have. Did he move under braking, or did he move just before the braking zone?
I think he was trying to make a pass on someone.
Okay.
But it's the first lap, cold tyres, heavy fuel, and he's just spun and probably damaged the tyres, so just a bit unsure on braking. Relatively light impact, but it did. Well, Colapinto did. He got a puncture from it, and then I think he had he didn't finish the race in the end.
Yes, he didn't finish the race.
So
I think it might have been because they might have been like, oh, bit of chassis damage, we can't be asked. We're going to finish 17th anyway. But yeah. He obviously that was Colapinto's last race in F1 for now. There's rumours he could go to. I think the rumours he's going to go to VCARB have been squashed, but there's chances he could find some other place somewhere else. He's definitely got the commitment to do it.
The Alpine again is kind of that seems to have gone as well. So I don't know if there's any other realistic options for him for the time being. So I don't know if he would go back. He probably wouldn't go back to Formula 2 because that's really expensive and it's very good. Also, it's very good at like killing your career and your mental health as well. So he might just stay as a reserve and hope that Alex has, him or Sainz have more than one appendix or something. I don't know.
Yeah. They just need to what's it called? Because F2 doesn't mean anything nowadays. You've seen that. I don't know what position Franco was when he came to F1. It was like top 10, but he wasn't
somewhere in the middle. He had like one win in a sprint race or something.
Yeah, like that proves that you can be middling in F2 but really good in F1. Like him, like even arguably Behrman's proven. Like Behrman's performances, if you translate his F2 performances, they shouldn't translate to his F1 performances. 15th should not translate in F2, should not translate to good results in F1, but it proves how much of a lottery the feeder series have been. I know this is kind of going on a tangent, but I believe that F2 as a concept needs to have a lot of things of it reworked. The engines need to be reworked, that they don't just blow up every now and again, and they're a lot more regulated in terms of we've come at points this season where certain drivers have rocket ship engines and certain drivers have even said publicly, my engine isn't as good as my teammates. I think they should be regulated a lot more heavily, and the main bulk of the pace should come from setup work from the teams, because you're always going to have teams like your Premers, your High-Techs, your ARTs who are always at the top and always doing well. That's fine, because that's common in any spec series or any series where the cars are all the same. But they need to regulate the engines, make sure that the quality checks and all that sort of stuff is a lot more scrutiny than it actually is, and just make it so that the guys who are consistently there and consistently doing well are getting the results they deserve.
Yeah, I mean, there needs to be less of a team element, because we're used to seeing Prema for the most part being really at the front all the time. It's like it shouldn't really work that way if everyone has the same car. It's because they had, I mean, like when the W Series first began, they had teams sort of, but they didn't really mean anything because it was all controlled by one central kind of power, and they just gave them teams nominally. And maybe it needs more of that, because otherwise it's like we get this whole thing that Prema have the best mechanics and they can afford to do more testing time or whatever it is that tend to make them better, even though they were kind of shit this year. McLaren, either way, they've got that constructors title really given to them by Checo being useless and costing it for Red Bull. For Lando, though, I mean, he has relaxed a lot more in the past 3 races once he knows the title's gone, and maybe he can reflect a bit more and realize why he lost it. Because he can't. It's not like he can blame it on reliability or anything. It's just him needs to get on top of his race starts. Needs to maybe understand Max's racecraft a bit more, and it's like, okay, well, if doing this is not going to work against him, so let's try something different, or that kind of deal. And Piastri has been kind of touch and go. He's been really good at some moments, and then just very average at others. And it's getting a little underwhelming, I think, considering how amazing his junior career was. But so next year they're probably fighting for the title. I can't imagine Red Bull will be involved, and maybe then we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, I mean, the way I'd put it is, if McLaren are the dominant or the best car by a good margin at the start of next year, I think that Norris will have a different mindset, because obviously he's been on the back foot this year. He's needed to gain those points of his own accord, and I think that's part of the reason why he didn't get that. Obviously, that's no excuse. He should have been up there getting at least 60-70% of the wins when his car was the fastest, at least, because that's what the likes of Hamilton did when he was dominating. But he just didn't do that. If he gets to the point where he can just mature, it's going to be his his 6th or 7th season next year. He needs to realistically put his finger out realistically, because as much as Piastri underwhelmed this season, we saw him in 2023. At his peak in 2023, he was just as quick, if not quicker, than Norris, and more consistent and more mature, and appeared a lot more like he had a higher ceiling potential. So if he can better his performances, because Piastri has been the more underwhelming of the two. That's what when people say Norris bottled the title, they don't talk about how Piastri is 50 or 100 points behind him in the standings. So if McLaren are the best team in next year, or even close to Ferrari, which is what it's looking like, if they aren't finishing at least first and third with both drivers, they may as well sack them both off and bring in Bortoleto or whoever else they've got coming up the ranks.
Yeah, I don't know with Bortoleto, because he's going to Sauber, if that's going to be a situation where he's on loan to McLaren, or if he's still joined with them. But even so, I think in that case, I feel like one of the first people they would look at might be someone like Pato O'Ward, because they've been getting him to do a bunch of FP1 stuff, and he's getting. I mean, he did FP1 in Mexico, but then for the last 3 or 4 races, he's been in the paddock at each of them.
Yeah, it's because the IndyCar season is finished. That's
so he's got a lot of free time now. They seem to, and I'm sure that he would take it and run if he got the opportunity to be an F1. They might try him out. Because there were even talks of Piastri maybe going to Red Bull to replace Checo, which would have been very interesting, and that frees it up. Otherwise, it's kind of a dead end for because the other juniors, they got not that they're ready for F1, but like Brando Badoa, Martinius Stenshorn, Alex Dunn, Ugo Chukwu. I mean, they're all miles off F1, but for them, this is kind of a dead end. It's a very locked in lineup there.
Yeah, they'd have to recruit from outside, whether it be some other like middling driver who hasn't really got much going for them, like I don't know, Bottas. They could bring him back or whatever. That would be clutching at straws, realistically. I mean, let's say if Perez does not get a seat for next year, or if he does get dropped for Red Bull at the end of 2025, he could go back to a team that he left acrimoniously over 10 years ago.
Yeah, but either way, yeah, they're in a good position, I think, to make a proper run for the drivers' title next year. The other one that will be as well is Ferrari.
Yeah.
So they entered the race 2nd and 3rd. I mean, a especially good race from Charles, because things kind of fell apart in qualifying. They took an engine penalty and went to the back. I went from 19th to 3rd. I think he gained 11 positions on the first lap or something as well.
So really impressive drive.
You can't mock him for trying. They was obviously doing everything he could to try and get them in a position to take the constructors, and it was never going to be enough though, because just Lando winning alone would have done it, even if they were 2nd and 3rd. Sainz as well, he tried to get him in the pit stops but burned his tyres out and just couldn't. They just didn't quite have the pace today, and Leclerc was hanging by a thread at the end because he'd been running those hard tyres for a very long time. But yeah, good performance there. They secured 2nd in the constructors. Sainz, well, yeah, obviously huge changes next year because Sainz is off to Williams. Now it's going to be Lewis in that car. And we'll see. Even though they lost the constructor titles, they lost the money. It's Ferrari, so they get that heritage bonus or whatever it is, and they're never going to run out of money. But also, it does mean that they get more time in the wind tunnel for 2026. So this might serve them quite well in 2 years.
Yeah, I feel like Ferrari can be happy with themselves with this season. Like, if you'd have told them at the start of, maybe not at the start of the year, in the mid part of the year when they were struggling to even, I mean, Leclerc was struggling to finish inside the top 10, admittedly not due to direct performance reasons. But like at times they were the 4th quickest car, at times they were the 1st quickest car. If they can just have a machine that's consistent over every single racetrack, like what McLaren have had, really, then they will have a situation where they'll be fighting for a title next year. Then finishing, well, not being out of the constructors' contention with 1 race to go, for me, is a great improvement. Like, if you'd have told a Ferrari fan in 2021 or 2020 that would be the case in 3 years' time, they'd have bitten your hand off or whatever. So, yeah, they've got, obviously, Lewis, I think, this is a tough one. We've got Charles, who's obviously il predestinino, the predestined driver, the guy the golden boy that everyone at Ferrari wants to succeed, and then you've got Lewis Hamilton coming in, who will not accept being a number 2 driver and will want to be the number 1 driver. I mentioned this on a news article that I did about a week ago. I don't want it to end up like Alonso and Hamilton 2007, because that would just be pointless, and it would just take point. They'll be taking points off of each other. But I think that on current form, Leclerc is infinitely better than Hamilton. Whether Lewis gels well with the Ferrari power unit, gels well with the Ferrari structure, gels well with the entire team and the aero package is another question. But just based off this season's form, if Lewis doesn't pull something magic out of a hat going into 2025, he's going to get shown up big time by this young driver who we've seen has the potential to get race wins and potential to challenge Max on a couple of occasions, but hasn't done so over an entire season because of, well, partly his own mistakes, but also because his team hasn't managed to be consistent over a season.
I mean, it's something I've been contemplating for months now, because it's been about 10 months since the announcement came. And I guess in a few months' time, we'll have some answers on how it's going to go. It's just that, to go from having raced Mercedes power your whole career, and even a lot of his junior career, and then suddenly switching to Ferrari. So there's that adjustment to adjust into the engine, the aero, just the team operation and culture is going to be very different as well. And then he has to go against Charles, and Charles has been embedded into the team for a long time. It seems that it doesn't often work that people go to Ferrari late in their careers, or when they haven't been brought up with them as an academy driver or whatever, and it works out for them, especially British drivers. It seems like you need to have been there from the start and to build it around you, because the other examples haven't worked that well of that, except maybe Schumacher, because he had 2 championships, was 4 or 5 years into his career by then. But the other British ones, like Eddie Irvine was just the number 2 driver. Mansell, that didn't work out well. Mid 80s, the team wasn't in a brilliant state anyway. Alonso, it didn't happen. Vettel, it didn't happen. It's who knows, really.
I think Mansell's the best example of those, because, as you said, Schumacher was there in the middle of his career. Alonso was too. Mansell obviously wasn't bang at the end of his career, because obviously he had Williams after. But it was as close as you're going to get realistic with all the kind of guys. And Mansell again showed flashes of potential. 89 Brazil, when he won with that temperamental semi-automatic gearbox, and he had a couple of others. He was up against Alain Prost, who admittedly he hadn't been Ferrari through and through, but he was a driver who knew how to play the political game, knew how Ferrari worked, could speak Italian from what I know. Mansell didn't learn any of that. Charles knows Italian, and although yes, we're a lot more of a open society nowadays, and I don't think it's a death sentence to not be able to speak English. And obviously, Lewis will be learning it, but he won't be up to a level where he can properly start not talking with the engineers, because they'll know English as well. But he's not going to be properly embedded in that team, even if he stays past 2025 into 2026 and 2027. He's just not going to have that affinity with the team. And I think that even subconsciously, the guys on his side of the garage will be thinking, why am I not with Charles?
Yeah, I mean, again, Prost is another example of a driver that it just didn't really work going to Ferrari. He was in there for a couple of years, and mostly, I think, to just get away from Senna, and then he ended up getting fired from them. It's just, I think it signals that he's approaching retirement, which we knew anyway. That he well, if I want my chance to drive for Ferrari, I need to take it now. Which I understand. Whether he does do more than 1 year with them remains to be seen. If this year goes badly, he might just call it quits at that point, unless he knows, similar to Mercedes, that they've got something really good planned for 2026. But yeah, I guess that brings us to Mercedes, because they ended fairly strongly, 4th and 5th. I mean, Lewis again, bad qualifying, Q1, but made that up. Ran long and had all the pace at the end, and just got George on the very last lap. And George was, he was just kind of running around in 4th the whole race until the very end. So they had reasonable pace in that one. It did mean, because people were saying that in their time as teammates, they were actually been going into the final race, they were tied on points, and so Hamilton just wins that by 3 points. He wins that battle. So they've had a lot of up and down races, and this was definitely one of their better ones, I think.
As a pair, I'd argue that they were a lot more. But Lewis's Q1 elimination wasn't entirely his fault. We saw that bollard and stuff. I don't know how much that actually affected him, because I think just in general, bollards don't really affect aerodynamic performance. And I think I'm not sure if it literally scooped up underneath the car within like 100 meters of going over it. But his recovery was pretty impressive. Yeah, I mean, it could probably just be because it's his last race and he wants to drive like absolutely crazy, like Vettel did at Abu Dhabi in 2022. He seemed like a different driver to what he'd been the entire rest of the season and a couple of years before that. Like it was like he was returning to his not 2013 form, but that was good from Vettel in Abu Dhabi 22, and it's similar thing for Lewis here. I would say that he still needs to step his game up because, like you mentioned the points. Like, don't get me wrong, George Russell is not a bad driver. He's won 4 races, and I think that given if a Mercedes was to become, let's say, the best car next year, I think he'd win the championship. He's not going to be like a Lando Norris, but as a 7-time champion, so-called GOAT, Lewis Hamilton should be having a good, solid upper hand on this guy. He shouldn't be getting the same amount of points with him over a 3-year span, even if he had a couple of experimental setups in 2022 and poor qualifying this year, both of which were his own choices. Like, he could have chosen not to do those experimental setups. He could have chosen to actually drive normally in qualifying, like everyone else. No one else had the same issues that he did. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, qualifying has been especially bad. George has missed a Saturday, but Lewis has had a lot of... in the past 3 years, he's had 1 pole position. And yeah, a lot of Q1 eliminations and everything. And that then informs his race performance because he has to cover further back. But races, he's usually been fine. There's been a couple of races where he was outside the points, but most of them he was able to make ground up and the car would just work better. But yeah, he was kind of... I mean, the most egregious example is Vegas because he cost himself the win with his messing up both of his laps when he clearly could have won the race otherwise. Yeah. It's stuff like that, but if he can sort that out. But I think that in the races he should be okay, but I think in qualifying he's really going to have a very hard time against Leclerc because, again, Leclerc is an insane qualifier.
Maybe the Ferrari, because I think 2023 and 22, like 22 was particularly bad, but 23, I've done like loads of statistical analysis of all Lewis's seasons and loads of other drivers, and he was 0.066 seconds, I think it was, on average quicker than George, with all caveats removed. Like if they had some sort of problem in qualifying, I took those out. So he was actually quicker than George in 2023. I don't think I think it's just this year for some reason the characteristics of the Mercedes over 1 lap. I'm not sure if it's the tires. I'm not sure if it's just the way the aero platform works when it's being pushed at 100%, or whether Lewis just doesn't have the micro corrections that he might have had in previous years. But I have a feeling that the new characteristics of a Ferrari, even if it's something he's not used to, just a new characteristic, might null that out. Obviously, that might be completely untrue, and maybe he's going to come in. I don't think he'll be as quick as Leclerc immediately because Leclerc's been there longer. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah.
But it's a case of whether he can gain that, complete that over the course of the season, when he can improve and get up to a level where he can beat him, which he might do. I might be wrong, and he might go on and win a championship, but I don't think that's going to happen.
Yeah, so in the qualifying championship from last year, he beat George, but only by 6 points. So there was hardly anything in it on that front. Another issue, I suppose, is that contractually, is not allowed to give his own input in how he wants the car to be built for next year, because I imagine most of the development's already been done. So that's going to be the initial advantage that Leclerc's going to have, as he has that input and understanding.
Yes.
So there's going to be a lot of teething problems, but then maybe come 26, development has probably already begun on that, but I imagine he might have some say in how that works. I don't know.
I mean, him and Leclerc have similar but also different driving styles. Leclerc is not very aggressive, but he's on the more aggressive side, whereas the only thing Lewis has in aggression is really braking, and he's kind of smooth everywhere else. So that would probably be to his detriment, if anything. But again, a driver of Lewis's so-called caliber, where he's a 7-time champion, even in a car that's not suited to him, like whenever Schumacher or Fangio or Clark or Prost or Senna had a car that wasn't particularly to their liking, they got used to it and they crushed their teammates. So Lewis should do the same, but he hasn't historically against the likes of Button and Rosberg. So I don't think it's going to happen again, but I could be proven wrong. He could pull something out of the hat.
Yeah, I guess we'll just have to, at long last, wait and see, because it's not long to go now. Next up is Red Bull. So as you mentioned before, Max, threw caution to the wind, had that collision with Piastri. Fairly inconsequential at the end of the day because the championship for him is done, and they'd also locked in 3rd place in the constructors. And for the rest of the race, he had to take the penalty. Without the penalty, he would have finished probably maybe just ahead or very close with the Mercedes. because he was kind of not that far off them by the end. But yeah, it doesn't matter for him. Checo, by his standards, he made Q3, which is a miracle in and of itself, even though he qualified, 9th or 10th, but then he got hit by Bottas on lap 1, and that was that. So that's a pretty miserable end. Well, he's been, every race he's gotten worse and worse for the past, ever since Baku, basically. Yeah. Each race after that is worse and worse. Well, I think today...
Our expectations for you were low, but holy fuck.
Yeah, I think today, when we're filming this, is when they're apparently Red Bull are deciding his future, and then we'll know by the end of the week what they've done, and it has to be that he's gone, and maybe they'll keep him in some ambassador role, or maybe they'll just demote him to demote him to third driver, because he's got that. He just started that Kit Kat sponsorship deal, and which Pato has done as well. So that's a Mexican thing, and the Mexican market's huge. It's all fine and well, but that's one race a year, and he was absolute dog shit both this year and last year in Mexico.
Yeah.
So and again, the one track he's good at, Baku, and he crashes on right at the last lap. There's not.
It wasn't his fault.
Yeah, I don't know. I'd have to look at it again. But it's kind of at this point his performances are indefensible, because now even Christian's not coming to his defense, and Helmut Marko is being asked about this every single day. He's got a new random AI generated statement about what they're deciding with him. And it's the same with Checo, because he always responds saying, either way, I have a contract, which is his way of saying he's basically going to take this to court, I think, and try and force them to keep him on. But they can just throw... Well, the thing is, isn't that... I'm sure that there was... Well, the thing is, there was a performance clause in his last contract before he extended it, and he hadn't met that, and we thought that was going to be done. We thought he'd be out before the summer break, and that didn't happen. But at this point, they cannot possibly keep keeping him on. And it looks like Liam Lawson is the most likely replacement, because they don't seem interested in Tsunoda, and fair enough, why not? And then I guess Hadjar goes in the RV.
Another point to make about that is, if Red Bull, because Red Bull, I don't think are going to be the best car next year. They'll be not middling around the midfield, but upper kind of. I think McLaren and Ferrari will be on a level, and then Red Bull will be on a level below that. If they have a second driver who's middling around and doing nothing, that's going to kill them in the constructors. They might finish 4th or 5th, because I assume the likes of Mercedes will be close. The likes of even Alpine, they've come on strong at the end of this season. Haas. I'm not suggesting that Red Bull would be finishing 7th in the constructors, but they could easily lose 10 or 20 million pounds or dollars or euros or whatever currency you use, just because Perez is utter dog shit.
I'm sure that this is in their consideration, because they know that things are not going to be so easy. It's unlikely things will be so easy next year, because they'll have lost no Adrian Newey, no Jonathan Wheatley. That's a huge change. And they'll be thinking, okay, we need every every point we can get. And if you think how bad he is in this car already, how much worse is he going to be in another car, in a car that's even worse? So
how much worse can Lawson or Tsunoda, or whichever driver you pick? Is that how bad can they actually be?
And any sponsorship money that he brings in from fucking Kit Kat or whatever, it's been offset by the amount of money he's cost them by dropping them 2 places in the constructors. So he's got nowhere to hide. So hopefully we'll know soon what his fate is. Who's next? It is
surely
Alpine. Alpine, okay. Gasly has had an amazing second half of the season. I mean, he was running in third for some of the race, doesn't have the pace to keep it, but yeah, he did well there. He did well last week in Qatar, and again, he qualified second or third in Vegas, and then the engine blew because he got too much of a slipstream. He's really riding a wave, and in general, he has actually been very good ever since he left Red Bull. He's been pretty indomitable against his teammates. He's been punching above his weight. Dominating the midfield and getting up there with the big boys in the end. So and it was through that they kind of risked losing 6th in the constructors, and they just about hung on to it because he did so well. Because they decided to drop Ocon one race early and bring in Jack Doohan, which, from their perspective, that's a huge risk to take, because they knew that this fight was going to be close. And Doohan himself, knocked out in Q1, qualified last, finished 15th. There was a little battle with Stroll, but there's not much else you can really expect to come in for the very last race of the season. It's not the timing is not brilliant, but they did this kind of to punish Ocon, because he wanted to do the post-season test of Haas. And they were like, okay, we'll just get rid of you. Because I think he thought he was going to be doing it, because they said he was told just before the Qatar race. He also had a special helmet design prepared for Abu Dhabi. And they gave a bigger send-off to Sonny Hayes than they did to him, and he's their only race winner they've ever had. So not a good way to get rid of him.
I think Doohan was put in as a litmus test, just to see, because of all of the rookies coming in for next year. I mean, Bearman, quote unquote rookie. Yes, he's done 3 races, so he's not officially a rookie, but it's his first full-time season. You've got the likes of Antonelli, you've got and I've now forgotten all of the rookies, Bortoletto, and a handful of others all coming in. Doohan's the least impressive or the least kind of exciting one of the lot because he hasn't competed in F2 this season. When he did compete in F2, he was like second or third in the standings, and was miserable in his first season. And it's just like, don't get me wrong, Jack Doohan is not a bad driver. He's not going to come in and be like what Nikita Mazepin was at the start of 2021. As Abu Dhabi proved, he was just really anonymous and really quiet. But he's just, I don't see why they've gone for him. Like, there were so many other options. Like, I'd argue that going for someone like Paul Aron, who they've signed on as their reserve driver, would be a better option because he has recent F2 experience. Yes, he hasn't done the FP1s and stuff, but you can do testing in a 2022 car or ever start 2025, a 2023 car. You can do testing in modern cars to get them acclimatized to this region and this climate. And I mean, even if you don't go for a rookie or someone who hasn't raced in F1, there are plenty of free agents going into next year. Obviously, when they signed it, people like Magnussen and Zhou might not have been confirmed to have been gone, or Bottas. But they're all infinitely better options than Doohan. So I don't know why the idea of teams should always be trying to promote their rookies, not if they're shit. People seem to have had a go at teams in the previous couple of years, like driver academies, for not promoting their junior drivers. People like Drugovic, and I'm trying to think of other examples where teams have snubbed their junior. Porsche, yeah, it's because they aren't good enough. Porsche and Drugovic were both at least third season champions who had, Drugovic had an impressive F2 season, but I will stand by this. He would not be a better option than Stroll, even with Stroll's inconsistent performances, just because now he's not raced in a Formula car for 2 years, and he's just like, he's blindingly average. And Porsche, well, first of all, he's French. Second of all, he was just error prone and crash prone in the start of his F2 campaign, and he hasn't done anything special since he won at Monaco, aged like 18 or whatever he was. So,
yeah. I mean, they fall into a bit of a trap because people say, "Oh, they're so rusty," and everything else is, "Oh, well, that's because the testing restrictions really limits the kind of mileage they can get in the preparation." With Doohan, he does a lot of simulator work. They're using him for that very prolifically. So I get the feeling he's probably good at the technical side, or he's able to relay information in a way that's constructive to them. His junior career is okay. I guess he's in a position of being, I don't know, a slightly better version of someone like Zhou Guanyu. I don't know if he brings in much in terms of sponsorship. I think I think his sunglasses things he's sponsored by, or there's something else. But I think a lot of it is his name because his dad is Mick Doohan.
Yeah,
but yeah, again, it's about, I guess, maintaining the pipeline. But it was just that when he got signed, almost immediately they was like, oh, actually, they might just drop him early because they want to get Colapinto in. But then the Colapinto hype train has crashed and burned, and he started becoming he started turning into a bad Logan Sargent tribute act in the final few races. So I think the other teams, they got a bit excited and then they lost interest quickly. Like, actually, no, he's not that remarkable. Yeah, we'll just see what he does. He's not gonna. I don't think he's gonna set the world alight. He's just gonna be there, and he's gonna exist and be in the races and sometimes do stuff. That's just
I hope he's not going to fall into like an Esteban Gutierrez kind of Marcus Ericsson level driver, because that's what I'm worried. I've seen this Abu Dhabi performance. Like, even Bearman on his debut with Ferrari, you looked at it and you goes, like, yes, he's off the performance of the car. Yes, he's about half a second off, but he had a lot less preparation time. And I think, for example, Bearman did a much better job, and all of the guys who come into appearances have done much better.
Yeah, I mean, Jeddah, he had less. It was told at the last minute, had less practice time. That's a really, really difficult circuit compared to Abu Dhabi. Jack he knew about this. He had plenty of time to prepare himself. It's a fairly straightforward circuit to learn. We saw a little bit of his battle with Stroll, and he nearly lost the car at one point, and that. But otherwise, he stayed out of trouble. It's just the gulf in the gap was quite large. If you think that Gasly I think Gasly almost made it to Q. He did make it to Q3. And then, he was running around in the points and Doohan just wasn't. But it's his first race, but still that gap is quite significant. And I get that maybe they may have just kicked Ocon. They clearly didn't want him anymore, but it's like, you can't say he wouldn't be better than that.
Yeah, exactly. Who's next then in the team in the
Haas.
Haas.
So they're main competitors in the battle for 6th.
That makes a lot of sense.
So Hülkenberg again is another one like Gasly who's been kind of dominating the midfield and had mostly very strong performances in the part. Well, not Qatar, but Vegas. I can't really remember, and not Sao Paulo either.
Not recently, just this season.
No, just at different points. Yeah, and he considering his age and that his career has been very stop-start. I mean, he's come and gone like 4 times now or something.
Yeah.
That he's still doing well, and that the Haas team the team in general has been good this year because they got rid of Gunter, and the tyre wear is not a problem anymore. But yeah, in the race, I mean, he qualified 4th, but then that bullshit penalty because it's like, okay, you overtook some people in the tunnel, so that's not the pit lane. So basically, something that penalised for something which has always been legal, but today we've just decided it's illegal. I mean, Max made a whole thing last year, like he was overtaking people in the pit exit all the time to get track position, so you can do it. Like what? Yeah, why does that warrant a 3-place grid penalty? But even there, the pace wasn't there because he finished. He wasn't going to. That podium was not going to happen, even with the drama at turn 1. So he finished 8th, got beaten by the Alpine. They lost their battle for 6th, but 7th by their standards is fairly decent. Magnussen, well, he was doing okay, and then he got hit by Bottas, which set him back a bit. Before that, he was kind of near the points, I think, or something. But yeah, I think he's done. I think now he is done for good. It's the 3rd time it's happened, but I think it's the 3rd. Yeah, it's the 3rd time he's had his last race, and I think this time it is actually the last race because he's going to BMW and WEC, following the footsteps of his dad, I guess. So yeah, they had all right season, and the race, yeah, not bad.
Yeah, I don't think there's really much to add. Obviously, it wasn't the same as Hülkenberg's performances in the middle of the year when he was getting like 6th places, but I think that car is also not where it was. I'm pretty sure if we had Ace Shield on, he'd be talking about how Haas is the best in the midfield and they should be getting 8th and 9th every single race, but that's not really where. I don't think that's really where they are at the moment. And Magnussen, I mean, it's a kind of an anonymous farewell. I'm surprised he didn't do donuts or something like that to commemorate his so-called like last race.
He did in 2020. I mean, he wouldn't have done it on the pit straight because that was only meant to be that Lewis was allowed. I mean, they let Lewis. I guess. I mean, it looked a bit odd to me because it's not like he was retiring. Because when Alonso did in 2018, he was retiring. When Vettel did in 22, he was retiring. But like Vettel never got a send off for leaving Red Bull.
Ferrari,
Abu Dhabi 2014, that kind of thing. I mean, his Ferrari send off, he just kind of sung to himself on the radio on the way back round. I remember in 2020 they said, "Can I do donuts?" And the pit wall just went no, and then he starts doing donuts immediately.
That was Grosjean won it.
Oh, maybe it was Grosjean. I don't know. But yeah, I mean, Magnussen, he's not what he's got one podium, which he got what 10 years ago. His first fucking race. Other than that, he's just been this kind of fairly destructive midfielder for the most part that's just come and gone all the time. Like there's not, it's not like he's an ex-champion or whatever. There is an ex-champion on Aston Martin though. They had, they had. I mean, they've been pretty anonymous in the part towards the end of the season. I mean, they've done their usual thing where the start of the season is good, and then they start bringing upgrades that make the car slower, and then Alonso loses the will to live, and then Stroll just kind of tootles along. It's like, oh, I can suddenly beat him now that the car's useless. But I saw hardly anything of them in the race. I mean, I don't think Alonso made Q3. I missed most of qualifying, so I can't really remember half of it. Oh, he did. Started 8th, finished 9th. I mean, he was, pace was okay, but just not there, and it hasn't been there. It hasn't been there for this season because they haven't got a single podium this season, so the car just hasn't been good. It's been, for the most part, they haven't got much attention this year. It's been quite quiet and subdued from both of them.
They're just waiting for Newey.
Waiting for him. That was obviously the big moment, was we're getting Adrian Newey in 2 years' time. Stroll in the race, I saw, other than his little battle with Jack Doohan, I saw nothing of him. So pretty anonymous performance, and it means they still secured 5th in the constructors because they kind of were in that middle ground where they had no one to fight with. Really,
yeah. I mean, that's probably where you want to be in that. You don't want to be splitting hairs over 5 points. And yeah, I mean, Alonso's probably carried them in that regard, but yeah, there's not really much to add to them this season. It's just been kind of nothing in a nothing sandwich.
Yeah. And then Williams. So Williams was but not the best race for them. I mean, yeah, Alonso. I wish. Colapinto gets hit, which isn't his fault, and then that kills the car, and then it just breaks down. It's like, okay, there's not much you can do. Not that he was fighting for points anyway, because they both got knocked out in Q1. The buzz it faded really fast actually with him. Like the first few races, I was like, oh my god, he's amazing, because he was able to match Albon and able to just be better than Logan Sargent. And then he started crashing again all the time. I mean, if that counts as a crash, even though it wasn't his fault, I think that's their 17th accident this season. Albon was running in the points until the very end, and then he got passed by Piastri right near the end.
Yeah,
but
it was going to happen.
The thing is, everything just fell apart for them in Sao Paulo, because they were battling Alpine, and then Alpine got a double podium, and that they lost their fight with them, and also that was a race where that just was a train wreck for that team in general.
Yes.
So things kind of started okay and then fell off, and also it's also because now Albon looks so much more vulnerable, because he's had a rookie matching up to him, and then a rookie that started fading off, and Albon's been kind of fading off as well. Yes. And then Sainz is going to come in, and the big news that's come out just before we started recording is that Santander are going to be sponsoring Williams now, and they're all about sponsoring the Spanish drivers and bringing them in, and because Alonso had them too. That's going to be quite a lot of money, because they're a bank, so that might be very good for them, and maybe it could persuade, because we all know with Sainz, this is his port in the storm, and he has the exit clause that if a better team wants him, they can. Another bit of gossip is that there's a consideration that they might actually swap him and Antonelli round, so Sainz goes to Mercedes next year, and then Antonelli ends up in the Williams. Williams themselves probably wouldn't want that, because if you can have Sainz, take Sainz, but also they probably spent a lot of money to get him, and he's going to be better on car development, whereas Antonelli is a rookie, and I know he's supposed to be the second coming of Jesus and all of that. But,
they also don't want to become like the Mercedes junior team again, like they did with Russell and co.
Yeah, Sainz is in a position he's very good to lead, because the thing about him is he's really switched on, as well as being a generally good driver. He's one of the drivers you can tell is well educated, whereas like what Lando doesn't know in that lentil he calls a brain could fill a warehouse. But Sainz knows the technical stuff, and he just understands the rules and everything really well. And he can think on the fly and do his own strategies, and has to, because Ferrari suck. But I think it might be a bit of a culture shock to go back to Williams, because they're going to be terrible for the first few races at least.
I think Carlos Sainz is a better, more exotic version of Martin Brundle.
I guess so, yeah. I'm trying to. I suppose in that analogy, Senna is Max.
Yeah, pretty much.
His career got killed because he got shat on by some generational talent, and that just stopped his from going the way he wanted it. Because you could argue that maybe we see in the future that Carlos becomes a long-standing Spanish commentator. But yeah, that's a really good asset for Williams to have, and I look forward to him shitting all over Albon.
Yeah.
Well, what's after them?
Sauber?
RB.
Okay.
Well, there's not much to say here. Yuki kept going backwards. The whole race, he was just being overtaken all the time. They qualified 11th and 12th, and I was like, okay, well, if they keep it on the straight and narrow, they could get both of them in the points here, especially with the collision at the start. But I think one of them, I think it was Tsunoda, he actually stalled on the line.
Yeah.
Because there was a car that didn't move, and I was thinking, is that Doohan? And I was like, no, it's not pink. So I think it was Tsunoda, and then Lawson. His pit stop, one of the wheels wasn't attached. He almost caused the safety car, and then he managed to get it round and going again. But then the engine died right near the end, so it just didn't happen for them. Lawson again. People have taken far less notice of him than Colapinto, even though they came in at similar times. And he's been.
Because he already had precedent from last year, and because he did a lot better last year.
Yeah, he did. He hasn't been brilliant this time. He's got a couple of points, and he's been getting under Tsunoda's skin, but he hasn't been setting the world alight, even though he has a whole year more preparation and the experience from last year. He's got this very vintage kind of attitude problem of just, hating every driver. And I think some people are just aghast at that, because they assume that all the drivers are besties and whatnot. And it's like, well, if you look at Max and George, that's really not the case. A lot of them are fairly indifferent to each other at best.
Yeah, to be fair, when you're coming from Daniel, anyone who is slightly more egregious and slightly more angry is going to look like Adolf Hitler. So,
but yeah, even so, I think Lawson absolutely should be either in the Red Bull or the RB next year. Because actually, is he contracted for the RB? No,
I don't think he is. No, because
he isn't. it needs to be one of the two because he hasn't had a proper go at it yet. To just have these 2 short stints right at the end of the season, it's like we haven't got to see him do a full season yet and do all the preparation that goes into that and everything. I don't think he's he's kind of okay. He's obviously not this superstar. I think that Yuri Vips until N-word gate and that complete mental collapse he had 2 years ago could have been that, and then it just didn't happen. And Lawson just kind of picks up the scraps. He's like it's like when the second-born son becomes king because the other one dies from some disease before they took to the throne, and then he's thrown into a position he wasn't. So, something like that, or if they abdicate, like Edward VIII, and you're thrown into a role you were never supposed to have. It's that sort of thing.
Great royalty law there.
I was trying to find a way of wording it, the analogy, but because that's what happened with Henry VIII. He was the second son, but then his brother died, and then he became king.
Meanwhile, Yuki Tsunoda is Edward V, just not able to move anywhere.
Which one's the
Got locked in the Tower of London.
Oh yeah, the one that was killed by Richard III. I was thinking the 6th. I was like, no, he's the one that died as a teenager. One of those. Okay, enough of British royal history. I'll be now. I mean, I think next year they're becoming Racing Bulls or Raging Bulls or something too similar to Red Bull. I mean, a lot of people want to call them Minardi. I'm okay not calling them Minardi because that
is 20 years ago.
And also, other than the factory, there is no connection. As far as I'm concerned, they are Toro Rosso. They are the B team. You go there for 2 years at the most, and if you're good enough, you go up to Red Bull, and if you don't, you get kicked out. That's how it works. It's not supposed to be named after some fashion line or whatever it is, and called some stupid name like VCAR blah blah blah. And you're not supposed to be bringing back fossils from 10 years ago from the annals of Red Bull Junior team history.
Let's bring back Jean-Eric Vergne and Sebastian Buemi while we're at it.
I mean, the thing is, Buemi, he still does the young drivers tests and all the simulator stuff, and he's in his mid-30s now. Like they if they could, they might literally bring him back once he's bored of winning everything in WEC.
I met him at Goodwood in 2013. Great guy.
I've never met any. I've seen drivers from a distance. I haven't met any. I was in the same room as Tiffany Dell once, but I didn't get to speak to him. But he only did one Formula One race, but it still counts.
I've met Buemi, I've met Damon Hill, and I've met Ollie Behrman. That's it.
Right. Okay. Yeah. I'm yet to meet any. But So they ended the season in a similar kind of position to where they'd always been as Toro Rosso, just lower end of the midfield and that. But they need to sort out their marketing and just their ethos, I think. In terms of drivers, yes, it looks like Tsunoda is staying. He has the contract, and then the question becomes Lawson or Hadjar. I'm really not bothered by Hadjar. I can't stand the guy. Lawson, if it means, I'll take Checo staying at Red Bull if it means we don't have Hadjar. But that we'll see, because he's just going to be. I mean, him and they'll be wasting all of their repair costs on getting new radios and headsets with him and Tsunoda.
And they'd also have to spend more money on the helmets because his nose goes out that far, so they'll have to.
It's going to mess up his. He's going to have to adjust the brake bias, put it more to the back. It's going to mess up the balance and the ballast. And everything. Maybe that's why things went so badly in the last couple of races. Didn't he stall in the F2 race?
And people are trying to say, oh, F2 is a joke because the car's just stalling. It's like, no, it was his fault, you lemon.
I mean, okay, yeah, Formula 2 cars, it sucks because they don't, for some reason, they don't have anti-stall. And people's careers are literally being ruined because they don't have anti-stall. But normally the stalling comes when you so much as look at first gear from a spin. It's not, you don't normally stall at the start of the race unless it's like your first race. But that's more than anything else, even the issues with the Mechachrome engines, they have to put anti-stall in because it also creates so many totally unnecessary safety cars
and crashes at the start if someone does drop it
because they can't carry on. And it's like, this is the thing about people saying that F2 is it's you're paying a huge amount of money to have your career basically ruined because the cars are so bad. There's not really anyone else that's in a proper position because I mean there's always 10,000 Red Bull juniors. I mean Pepe Marti is not good enough yet. Goethe has got a full-time seat and he's been dog shit in Formula 2 since coming up for the most part.
I always feel like Goethe has been around for the last 5-10 years and I look, he's like 19. I'm like, oh, what? He's actually been around for ages.
I get him mixed up with Tramnitz. I mean, there are some people, I mean, he's not a junior anymore, but like Marcus Armstrong has been around for forever and he's been in everything and he knows everyone and he's raced against all the other drivers of his age category. There are some people where it's like they just keep going forever. Case in point, Richard Verschoor. Who's probably going to be there for his 20th season in Formula 2 or something.
He's just Max Verstappen's alt account in Formula 2.
Yeah, it's like, can you please just sod off to LMP2? Like, no one cares anymore. It doesn't count.
It's like Ralph Boschung 2.0, except slightly better.
It doesn't count if you win. Like, no one cares. Just go away.
He thinks it's Giorgio Pantano.
Yeah. The other Red Bull juniors, so there's those lot. Lindblad, he's probably going to get sped run up because he's still 17 or whatever. And he's been with Red Bull for like forever as well, but everyone's obsessed with him. The others, other
Red Bull juniors. Trying to think of F3 guys. You've already said 10 minutes.
Oh, there's the ones like I think James Agosi, Enzo Tarnvinichkul. But
who's the little kid in karting? The one who appeared. Josh, what's his name? Big Embe or something like that. Is he Red Bull?
I don't remember him. No. Ferrari have trialed a couple of new people. We'll probably hear on that soon. There were some karters. I can't remember. I did a video on this not that long ago, and I can't even remember who the other ones are. But yeah, basically people that aren't ready for Formula One. So yeah, Liam Lawson's the most senior one. I realistically, I think it should go to Tsunoda because he's been there the longest, and it's like, why? As an act of loyalty and generosity, why not let him try it?
And if he's shit, take him out of some break or something.
And it'll be very entertaining. And also, it'll be the first time we've seen a Japanese driver in an actually decent car since, Sato in 2004. If you get a podium out of it, it'd be great. Maybe a win, that'd be great to see a Japanese driver get a win. Him or Lawson is fine, just not Checo and not Hadjar.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. After them is Kick Sauber.
Yay!
So this race was not their best of, because recently they brought that upgrade package 20 races too late, and suddenly they've turned around. Bottas made it to Q3, so fair play. I think there's only the second time he's made Q3 this season, but then he hit Checo, I think got damage, and then he hit Magnussen, and then they just retired, and so there's not much to say. That was a pretty garbage last race for him. Joe just didn't have the pace for the points. He got knocked down in Q3, but he made moves up. But this wasn't Qatar. But he's done. I mean, that both of them, there's still speculation because I think Joe is interested in trying to get a reserve role with Ferrari, but that's going to go to Little Miss Nepotism instead, probably.
Claire.
Yeah, I mean, God, he did FP1 because now it was meant to go to Antonio Fuoco, who has been with Ferrari since 2013, and he literally won Le Mans in a Ferrari, and he was Charles' teammate.
Ex-GP2 driver, yeah.
Yeah, but no, let's give it to his shitey little brother who lost the Freca title to fucking Gianluca Petikov in a field of 10. I mean, I was watching that season. Almost every race, it was a 1-2 between those two. And I thought, this Petikov guy's all right, and then he does 2 races of Campos, and then the money dries out, and now he's doing Stock Car Brazil. But the other people that year, it was like Oliver Rasmussen, Patrick Pasma, Pierre-Louis Chauvet, Jamie Chadwick.
They are all just F3 rejects.
Yeah, basically. So he wasn't brilliant there. He only won sprint races in F3 and F2, and then he spent the rest of the time crashing into people. Like I think they did it so we can say we got 2 brothers to do the same team, because Ralph and Michael were never at the same team, so they couldn't do that. And any other brother, like the Farbys and whoever else, the other brother examples in the past.
Teo Farby and Corrado Farby at Brabham in 1984. Corrado subbed in for the races that Teo couldn't do. So
yeah, they never did it together. There's never been an example of them doing it together. But yeah, so there's that, and then Bottas. There were hints about a Red Bull reserve role because I think they were saying apparently you could choose his. They on the website for merchandise it listed. I look at that and I think that must be made up because they're not going to be dumb enough to put something like that on the website before making the official announcement.
It's probably just some intern who just accidentally put in his name on one of the drop down menus.
Yeah, the other one, which is much more realistic, is that he'd become a Mercedes reserve.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, because it's what he was there for years. Yeah. Well, no, he absolutely should have left, but he may as well go back there and reserve for them because the team know him. He's got even if he doesn't have any racecraft, he's got the experience and he knows.
And he'd just be in a testing role. He wouldn't be doing anything else.
Yeah. Just make him do quali laps all the time, and he'll be happy, and he'll be fine. So yeah, something like that. Because otherwise, he hasn't expressed any interest in doing any other series. I
think he'd be good in WEC, to be fair.
Yeah, because in WEC you don't have to race anyone; it's all done in the pit lane. Old strategy, so he'll be fine there. Why not? IndyCar, no thanks.
He doesn't really have a good personality for IndyCar. I think they get bored of his hippie Australian fucking mustache style very quickly.
If he was cosplaying as a hillbilly or a redneck, maybe he could do NASCAR. But
I think the racing style over there is a bit too aggressive as well. He would just get swallowed up.
Maybe he'll go all in and go for V8 supercars in that way. Although, but then again, he's not aggressive enough for that because people die in like every race in that series. Someone like that. But next year, entirely new lineup. Hülkenberg and then what's his face? I almost said Colapinto. Bortoletto because he took the F2 title.
Deserved.
Pretty anticlimactically because, as we mentioned, what's his face stalled at the start, and Aaron was taken out after the sprint race. That wasn't enough, and then he got another penalty because it's an F2 race, so there has to be a post-race penalty for something.
Yeah.
So again, mostly sheer consistency. Won it on his first year, not in quite the same indomitable fashion that people like Piastri and Leclerc did, but still, it's something. The car's not going to be good. We'll see what he does. And where he can go, but I guess it's nice to have a Brazilian back in Formula One, the first one since Massa.
Yeah, pretty much. Right, should we do tops and flops then?
Is that every team? Do we miss any?
I think it might be,
Alpine, Aston, Haas, RB. Oh yeah, that's all of them. Yeah, so... yeah.
Right.
Tops and flops of the race. Top 3, Charles, Lewis, and... God... I'm going to say Lando, but I feel like there's someone else that should be a top.
I've got one in my head, but I'm not going to say it because you use it.
Yeah, those 3, yeah. Charles, Lewis, and Lando.
I'm going to go Charles then Lewis, but I'm going to go Gasly.
Yeah, Gasly's good too. Flops.
We can't say Sauber anymore, really, because they weren't anonymous enough.
Well, no, they didn't flop this time. Williams flopped, but it wasn't necessarily their fault. Who was bad? Okay, well, I guess you'd have to say Max. Oscar, I think you can forgive Oscar probably. Doohan was fairly harmless. Bottas was dog shit, actually. So he can be bad. The rest of them were just there.
Yeah.
I mean, Tsunoda, he finished 12th, having started 11th with 3 retirements. He spent the whole race getting overtaken, so maybe that.
I think I'd personally go Doohan, Bottas, and then insert third driver here because I genuinely can't think of someone.
Yeah, I can't. Oh, Hadjar. Hadjar, we can have him instead.
Oh, yeah. Let's add him in as a tribute F2 act.
Yeah. Yeah, well, that's that then. I mean, we missed. There were a couple of races early in the season we missed. I mean, we never did a review for Jeddah. I think there was 1 or 2, but otherwise we've had 24 race reviews, and the season. It overall, it's been a good season. Not as good as some people wanted to make it out to be, but more eventful than last year. Slightly more of a title fight.
Invented drama is better than no drama.
Yeah. There was more of that. We had some drivers moving around more. But it has set things up very well. But there's a lot to look forward to next year. Yeah,
we should do a season review and a prediction at some point in the near future.
I think we'll need to do a season review because we did last year, and I can't remember if we did predictions. I don't remember if we did predictions for how this season was going to go.
Then you can do a reaction to the predictions and realize how fucking wrong you were because it's great. That's what every F1 YouTuber does.
Because I think we may have done. I remember vaguely I think unless this was the beginning of last year. I thought, okay, Max is going to dominate again. I thought Lando and Oscar would win 1 race at least, and both of them did that.
Yeah.
I didn't think Mercedes would improve as much as they did mid-season. So I wondered if they'd go another year, like Lewis in particular, would have another year of no wins.
We'll make bingo cards as well as predictions, so like we can tick them off midway through the year.
Yeah, we need to do this. I can't be asked to look now, but maybe there is one of the videos where we did do predictions from. We did I can't remember.
We'll get some nerdy fan on it because we definitely have those.
But yeah, I'm sure shortly we'll do a season review and we'll get the rest of the guys in and actually reflect on the whole season. But yeah, I'm glad it's done now. But it's been fun overall. It's just very, very long.
Yeah, a long hard slog basically.
But yeah, Abu Dhabi, not a bad way to end the season, and yeah, we all look forward to 2025.
Yeah.
You've been listening to the DRS Train podcast. We're on YouTube and Spotify, and you can find us on Instagram and X at the DRS Train podcast. Make sure to tune in for our next episode. Stay safe, and we'll see you all next time.
Bye-bye.